Hey everyone, my name's Cam. I'm here with Fred today. We're going to go over what it takes to be from a mentee perspective, and I'm going to be asking him questions as a mentor, and then we're going to go over what it takes, again, to become into a leadership position, going from mentee to mentor, and what that looks like, and again, the expectations. So, Fred, when you first started with us, I guess, what are some things that you immediately were able to, I guess, that stuck out for you that you were able to apply immediately into your business?
I think listening to you and your sales, when you're sitting down with a customer, really listening with purpose, listening with intent, with the intention of applying those skills that you learn. I mean, I've been in sales for a long period of time, not necessarily in insurance sales.
Yeah.
So coming into a new industry, I had to come in with a mindset of learning and trying to apply those teachings that you have, and so that requires a certain level of being humble.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you cannot have any sort of ego, and I think that's one thing I tell everyone. I told you right from the get-go, hey, if you're going to have an ego, like this just isn't a place for you. Obviously, I'm going to learn from you, but that doesn't necessarily mean, hey, I know everything. If you know everything, the results are going to be there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, another thing that I can say from the experience of working with you is, like, obviously you've been just great to work with in the sense you work. My favorite four-letter word, work.
Yeah.
So you get up in the morning, you do your dials. Oftentimes you're late into the evening, 8, 9 o'clock at night, meeting with clients. You have no problem, being the squeaky wheel, as I like to say. Squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So always asking questions, asking what could I have done better here. Another thing, though, I think that's been huge for you is like focusing on the nuances of what I do. It's not just, hey, this guy knows how to set a couple of appointments, or this guy knows how to close, but it's like, how do I close? And the things that I do, it's like, why do I do those things? So kind of work for me, or explain to me, what are different things that you've been able to take, and like how you're able to really like zoom in on those different nuances of what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm specifically looking for and keeping an eye out for the tonality, the pacing. So those nuances, as you say, the details, the devil's in the details. So a lot of times it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? And so what I'm listening for is those kind of those details in how you run your appointments. I mean, just as a student of sales in general for over almost 2 decades at this point, I realized that there's always going to be someone out there that you can learn from. And so when I'm listening to you, I'm basically taking what you're doing, and I'm trying to apply it. And then over time, I'll develop my own skills, my own style, right? And so for example, the School of Hard Knocks, there's an interview with Shaquille O'Neal. He says, he was asked the question, have you become the most successful basketball player, businessman? And he said essentially that he was a thief. He took things from Magic Johnson, took things from Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, and then he created Shaq. So that's what I'm ultimately doing, is that I'm listening to someone that has more experience than I do in insurance sales, and I'm taking what you are doing and I'm stealing it from you. And eventually,
I love that, yeah.
Eventually I'll have my own style within the telesales and insurance sales industry.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think a way to say that too is like a metaphor is like, we know how to build the structure of a house, but you can build your house based on what you want to look like, how you want to decorate it, right? But you can't just build the house without no sense of architecture, right? Just putting things up where you want to put up. There has to be like, this is how you put the beam up and this and that, right? And the same thing goes for when you're in the sales process. If you have no system, then you're not going to have a predictable sales process, which again, at the end of the week, what do I always tell you? At the end of the week, the end of the month, the end of the year, your bank account is a grade of how well you've done this job, right? Of how good of a student you've been, right? I guess like, so as far as like some of the things that outside of just like the nuances, right? But I guess some of the things like you feel that you've learned from me as far as like maybe some of the advanced market systems, or how to get into deeper conversations with the clients to add, upsell. I guess what are some things that you've taken or, applied into your business?
It's overall more of a mindset than anything else. You have to have a curious mind. I'm always asking myself, I'm always asking you, of course, how do I get better, right? If I have a sit that I didn't sell, I'm wondering if there's anything I could have done differently, right? So I'm always wondering whether or not I can do do something more. So I think the purpose of mentioning that is you have to ask for help when you need it. So for the folks that are starting that may not understand exactly what to do at all times, I think that you always when you need help, you have to ask for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to show essentially an interest in getting better, because otherwise your mentor or your leaders are just not going to put as much time into you if you don't show that you're willing to put that time in to mastering your craft on your own, right? So I'm always asking you different questions on how I could have done better in certain things, certain situations, and I think being ultimately curious is why I have a desire, an undying desire to get better at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, obviously the application, but the ambition, I think, is the word we're looking at here. Like, you've got to have some level of ambition, and then be able to, are you taking notes or whatever that way you remember things, right? Like, one thing I would say about you that's made you a great student of this is you're not asking me the same question 10 times. It's like, you've asked that question, all right, here's the answer, great, I'm going to apply that answer. Now we're on to the next question. But if you can't, as a mentee, take that answer, that question, apply it, and then you're going back and asking the same question again, as a leader, and I would say any leader or any mentor is going to say, how much do you really care if you're not taking that and applying that? So I guess, what are like ways that you feel like you're able to remember things? Like, for example, when I'm running a sit, or when I might be going over some leadership stuff or helping with a recruiting meeting, I guess, what are some things that you've been able to take, or I guess, how are you able to remember those things moving forward?
For me, and everybody learns differently, for me it's more auditory and visual, right?
Okay.
So I listen to your tonality, your pacing, and I watch you as you're doing these sits, right? And I can almost see your brain working through your body language. And so as I'm looking at that, that's how I remember certain things. Maybe it's a one-liner that you say, maybe it's the pacing, maybe it's the tonality, the intonations in your voice, the fluctuations. And so that, for me, is how I remember things. So a lot of folks need to write it down. That's not necessarily, for me, that doesn't always work, because I'm focused on writing it down versus actually hearing and listening and watching. So I'm auditory and a visual learner.
Okay, I love that. I guess, so for you, having been a good student, in this, and obviously able to show results pretty quickly, what are, I would say, three sentences, right? What would be the 3 sentences of how you've been able to be good quickly?
I'll break it down in a couple words,
Okay.
right, rather than a sentence. Curiosity,
Okay.
and ambition, and being humble.
Okay. So humble, being humility,
Humility,
curiosity,
yeah.
and lack of ego.
Yeah.
Right. Lack of ego,
Yeah.
and then obviously ambition is you can't do this without ambition, right?
Yeah,
You got to be hungry. You got to be hungry. So I guess, like, another thing, like, I guess my final thoughts on this is, as you become more and more proficient in this, now I guess, as going to that stage where you're going to become the mentor, I guess, what would be 3 things you would tell people getting into that stage where they're going into that level of, like, leadership, where they've got some proficiency, they're starting to sell? What would be 3 things you would tell them?
I think that being available is first and foremost, right? You've always been available as a mentor to me. I think being available for your mentees, for the people that you're leading, is most important thing first and foremost. Secondly, being patient. Obviously, there's questions that you get oftentimes for the second time or third time, and also just pushing them to be better and to master their own craft, right? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't work if you don't. And
Exactly.
so that's what I've come to realize, is that not only as a mentee but as a mentor, and been in a situation like this previously, that being available, being patient, and pushing those students and those learners, the people that are new to the industry, to be the best version of themselves, right?
Absolutely. And just on top of that, like, one thing that's been refreshing for me working with you is, as you've gotten better, it does push your mentor. For example, we were talking, about a show ratio the other day, and I think we did the math on it, and you were, about 40%. We want that to be 50, 60%, right? But it's like, we looked at your closing ratio, and your closing ratio is actually much further above average than, industry average and our agency. I mean, it's really, really high. but be able to look at that and go, okay, that's how do we get 5% more on the show ratio? How do we do this? How do we do that? You're never going to get to those conversations if you're not doing the basics, if you're not, obviously making your calls, if you're not even able to do basic sales knowledge. So no, that's obviously I think that's great stuff there. So I guess like now that you feel like you've obviously more proficient, you're bringing people on, you've obviously said the different things that is good from a mentor perspective of what you've taken. I guess like what would be like any closing thoughts of someone just like, hey, this is like the number one thing you need to do if you want to succeed in this business? What would be that number one thing, like you have to do this or don't even continue with this?
Yeah, I think it's study, like do it on your own, right? In addition to surrounding yourself with the right people, you have to have the wherewithal to make sure that you're studying on your own, and ultimately becoming that master. Any athlete, any professional athlete, imagine yourself training as a professional athlete and take this just as seriously as they would, right? Because
absolutely,
this is your career, and ultimately you can be there to help as a mentor, as a leader. But it's going to be up to you as the learner and as somebody that's new to the industry. It's not going to the work is not going to be done for you. So
I love that.
At the end of the day, I think it's just important to come through with that curiosity, that ambition, and that humility that's going to take you to the next level.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to come in here with part-time effort and expect full-time pay.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Just not going to happen. But again, we've all gone to school, right? If you had even had a great professor or a bad professor, or a good teacher, a bad teacher, at the end of the day, the report card is based on how you were able to go through that class, right? That's how it's not, it's the teacher's fault,
right?
Despite sometimes your parents or someone, it's the bad professor, it's this or that. There's so many resources nowadays with YouTube and everything that it's at the end of the day, we try to be great leaders, we try to be great mentors, but if you're not taking that time to study, at the end of the day, it's going to be a tough road for you in this business. So awesome. I appreciate, obviously, you answering all those questions. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Awesome.